polls at the close.
Wow.
And we will have Harold Ford on.
And me too.
And you. I'm finding this out right now.
I predict Harold will be really happy to be on your show.
Are you going to be happy to be on the show?
I think we should all be grateful we're on these shows.
Well, we are grateful to be here, and I'll see you later tonight, too. That's it for us. Have a great night.
Dana, I was really thinking Greg was sexiest man alive. I really was.
I know. Once again, robbed.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. It is election night in America, and results are in for several closely watched races around the country. Welcome to Fox News Democracy 25 special coverage. I'm Brett Baer, live from Fox News election headquarters in New York.
And I'm Martha McCallum. 3 big races shaping the map tonight. In New York, Fox News projects Zohran Mamdani will become the city's first Democratic Socialist mayor, beating out Republican Curtis Sliwa and independent Andrew Cuomo.
In neighboring New Jersey, the Fox News decision desk projects that Democrat Mikie Sherrill will become the state's next governor there.
And meanwhile, Fox News also projects Democrat Abigail Spanberger will win the Virginia governor's race, flipping that seat to become the Commonwealth's first female governor.
We've got Fox team coverage tonight. Rich Edson in Virginia, Brian Yennis in New Jersey, and Alexis McAdams in New York.
Britt Hume is standing by, plus our panel right here to break it all down. Dana Perino, Shannon Bream, Harold Ford Jr., and Charlie Hurt.
Take a live look now as supporters are gathered at campaign headquarters for New York's mayoral candidates. And that is where we start with Alexis McAdams at the Mamdani HQ in Brooklyn. It's got to be getting pretty fired up there.
Brett, that's right. The music is loud. The people are here. And it's kind of like, you know, when people say the party is not going to start till later, don't show up until later on. Well, they showed up here right after the polls closed, because for these supporters of Zohran Mamdani, it wasn't a question of whether he was going to win or not in New York City. It was how much he was going to win by. So they had the momentum. And it comes down to affordability. So sometimes politics can be difficult and complicated to explain to people. Mamdani, the 34-year-old Democratic Socialist, tried to make it simple, okay? He said, I'm going to give you a free bus. I'm going to freeze your rent. I'm going to give a government-owned grocery store here in New York City. And people thought, sounds like a great idea. I'm going to vote for that guy, because they reject the Democrat establishment, according to the voters I talked to. The younger, more liberal voters here in New York City say they don't care who Chuck Schumer endorses. They don't care who Hakeem Jeffries backs. They care who's for the people of New York City and the people of the country. And whether people like him or not, he has a lot of support here, and people are excited for one time that I've seen talking to some of these voters about the future of the Democratic Party. So what's going to happen in New York City tomorrow when he wakes up and heads to City Hall and will be the next mayor here in the Big Apple, we'll have to see. But Andrew Cuomo thought he could close the gap, but looks like he didn't have it. Brett?
Alexis, thank you.
Bill Hemmer at the board breaking down the results tonight. Bill, as all of this sort of settles in, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And you think about the last 7 days of this campaign, how they were trying to drive Curtis Sliwa's numbers down. There was an active campaign here in New York City, and it was in your face just about every day. On top of that, they tried to get each other to drop out, right, during the debate season of 3 weeks ago. The effort to draw Sliwa voters away from him kind of worked, and I'm going to show you why, okay? He's down to single digits. Wasn't enough, all right? Cuomo's at 41.5. Come down here to Staten Island, all right? This is where Sliwa is the strongest. He checked in at 21% of the vote, which is, it's not nothing, okay? But I'm going to show you something from 4 years ago that really stands out. 4 years ago, Sliwa was at 70%. In that one borough of Staten Island, least populated of the 5, I grant you that, about 500,000 people live there. But if the idea was to get those voters, all 69,924 of them, and find a way to support Andrew Cuomo, they found some success in doing that, but it was not enough to catch Mamdani, who got over 50% of that vote, okay? Pop on out here to the big map. I'll show you where it stands right now. A little bit of votes still out there, but anytime you're over 50%, it is really hard, right? I mean, the math will tell you it just doesn't add up. In a three-way race, it makes it even more difficult. So we're starting to see that breakdown here in New York. I want to show you a few things. This is Brooklyn, okay? Brooklyn is really where Mamdani had most of his strength. And we're looking at these precincts, guys, right? Some of these precincts are half a block. Sometimes they're just a city street. That's all right? And some of these precincts, are behind Mamdani at greater than 95%. All right, up here in Williamsburg, okay? Heavy Mamdani territory. Into Bushwick, the neighborhood of Bed-Stuy, Park Slope in Brooklyn, and then right here in Borough Park, all right, he hits a wall. In Borough Park, it's Hasidic Jews. And they went for Cuomo overwhelmingly, 88, 89, 90%. But it wasn't in the end enough to overtake Mamdani and the lead that he had spotted himself. I'll point out two more things here quickly, guys. In the governor's race in New Jersey, all the polling said this thing was going to be really close. I tell you right now, with more than 80% of the vote in, Mikie Sherrill, she got a 13-point lead. I can't recall off the top of my head how many polls were out there that had her with a 13-point lead. But that, again, is the number right now in New Jersey. Virginia, real quick before I kick it back to you, we called this some time ago, Abigail Spanberger. I think you can make the case, too, that, I mean, she outperformed a lot of the polls that we had seen for weeks leading up to this campaign. But right now, Democrats 3-0 on the night, guys. Back to you.
Yeah, big wins. We'll come back. Okay, this year Fox News is debuting a new way to understand tonight's election results, the Fox News voter poll. It's the data that covers really thousands of voters who cast ballots early on election day by mail and in person. Sandra Smith has been crunching those numbers. Hey, Sandra.
And some of the key groups that we're seeing behind the vote really telling the story here in New York City. When you break it down by age of the voter, the youth vote overwhelmingly went for Mamdani in this race. 75% of their support went to him. And when you break this down into gender, that number gets even bigger. The female youth vote, women under the age of 30, you break that down, that number goes over 80% support for Mamdani in this race. Other key findings that we're finding in the New York City mayoral race, what qualities were voters looking for in their candidate? This was a change election. 27% said they wanted to bring change to the city. And look at that. They supported Mamdani. 72% of their vote went to him. Couple other things I want to highlight here. Do you identify as a democratic socialist? Look at this number. This is 1 out of every 4 New Yorkers who cast their ballot identified as a Democrat socialist. Of course, you click on this and you'll see their support went to Mamdani in this race, 81% of their support there. Couple other things I want to highlight here, Mamdani versus Cuomo. This was basically a question that we put to voters when they cast their ballot, that if Sliwa was not in the race, and this was just a hypothetical two-way matchup, Mamdani versus Cuomo, Brett and Martha, it gets close, but Mamdani still got the edge in that hypothetical matchup. Just a couple of things that we're taking away from all of that tonight.
All right, Sandra, thank you.
So let's bring in our panel, Dana Perino, Shannon Bream, Harold Ford Jr., and Charlie Hurt. Great to have all of you with us as we look at these results and very significant wins for Democrats tonight, Dana.
So my partner in crime over there, Bill Hemmer, mentioned the polling, and I think that's going to be one of the threads that people are going to want to pull after this, because the polling did suggest much tighter races. That is not what happened. But you know what was undefeated, and I'm sure Britt Hume will talk about this, and that is the betting markets. And so I think that the whole polling industry has to take a look and say, with these phones, with the new ways to do it, what do we don't have a handle on? I do think that to the extent that there was any story at all is a little bit of a surprise. These are blue states. There shouldn't have been much suspense, but I think that because the Democrats are in such disarray, aside from the Democratic Socialists, who appear to be going very strong, the Democrats are going to have a very difficult time. And I know my friend Harold is going to try to say that Zohran Mamdani is not a Democrat.
Well, he's going to start by
socialist.
He's going to start by saying thanks for having me.
He's going to be so glad to be on the table, but he already said that to me earlier today. But I think it's going to be very difficult from a messaging standpoint. All of the energy is behind Zohran Mamdani. And what I remember something that George Will said, every 20 years or so, people need a controlled experiment in socialism to remind them of why they need adults in charge. And unfortunately, for the city that is not of my birth, but is certainly the one that I adopted and that I love this place. I do hope for the best. I wish him the best and hope that he can love it as much as we do.
But Harold, you know, a lot of people in New York thought Bill de Blasio was that, and that it didn't work, and that this was not going to happen again. And here they are. And you wonder what this means for this city and what it means for your party.
Well, it is good to be back around the table. It's a blessing to be able to do this coverage. I'd say a couple of things. The last two mayors we've had in this city, Bill de Blasio and Eric Adams, many people thought that they were national figures, and they embraced that national figuredom that was put on them. Bill de Blasio ran for president. His campaign was roundly rebuffed. Eric Adams was on a trajectory, then he ran into some hurdles and opposition, some of it self-inflicted. But as he leaves office tonight, crime is coming down, and New York remains a place where people want to invest. We come to Mr. Mamdani. I'm surprised by some of the numbers also. I'm a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat socialist. Tonight will be interesting to hear his speech. Is it unifying? Does he reach out to Jessica Tisch? Does he try to allay some of the concerns?
The police commission.
Yes, Jessica Tisch, who is our police commissioner, who has shepherded this crime reduction, violent crime reduction in our city, and made, I live in this city and vote in this city. My kids go to school in this city, and make it easier for kids to take the subway, and for that matter, all New Yorkers to take the subway. Two, this was a good night for Dems. If Dems had lost one of these states, we'd be saying this is a terrible night. Dems won by 14 points in both Virginia and Virginia and New Jersey, and we won the Supreme Court races in Pennsylvania, and we retained the Public Service Commission seats in Georgia. Now, some will say we held serve. You got to hold serve to win. This is tomorrow, as we get ready for the political day, Mr. Trump and Republicans will have some questions to answer. The shutdown will still be on people's minds. I'll be curious to know, if we look at some of the polling, did the shutdown play in New Jersey and Virginia in these last week or two, as we talked about SNAP benefits and so forth? I don't know the answer to that. And two, there's a big conversation that's going to take place at the Supreme Court tomorrow about the legality of the tariffs. So the world goes on tomorrow. But as we sit here tonight, Democrats had a good night. And where I agree with Dana, we've got to decide if Mr. Mamdani is going to be the face of our party. I mentioned de Blasio and Adams because everyone thought they could be the leaders. But I argue the San Francisco mayor, Daniel Lurie, a Democrat who beat a Democrat in the primary, who wanted to face down crime and make San Francisco more attractive. The mayor of Philadelphia, who beat a Democrat, a black woman, who's addressing crime in a very different way. So there are mayors around the country who've had to deal with realities. I wish Mr. Mamdani the best, and I hope that the questions that people have about anti-Semitism and his lack of commitment to our police, I hope he's able to allay some of those concerns starting this evening.
President Trump is weighing in. He just posted on Truth Social, quote, Trump wasn't on the ballot and shutdown were the two reasons that Republicans lost elections tonight. Charlie Hurt.
That's a very Trumpian message, and it's true. I would say that it certainly was not a bad night for Democrats. But I would temper it a little bit. You know, if we sat back 6 months ago and sort of predicted the outcome of all of these races, we probably would have done a better job of getting it all right than you would by reading the polls in the last couple of weeks. Dana raises a great point, though, about the betting markets. It's like, who is it that's getting in late? I mean, they nail these things. Yeah. And even if the betting markets are wrong the day before the election, by the time, polls close, they are like within a tenth of a point. It does kind of, I'm suspicious enough that makes me wonder whether or not it's not campaign people doing it. But look, if you go back 40 years, not only are Virginia and New Jersey both solidly blue states now, if you go back, their reputation for voters rejecting whatever party won the White House in the previous year is almost without fail. There have been two examples, one in each state over the past 40 years, where they haven't done that. So this is not to be unexpected. I don't think that it's not a bad night for Democrats, but I don't know that you can really spike the ball here. Certainly Democrats won the expectations game because of the last couple of weeks, but they still have monumental problems. Not only do you have a communist in New York City, and we'll see how he decides to govern, but you also have the Jay Jones in Virginia, that Republicans are going to be able to run against both of these people all across the country.
Shannon, one of the things that President Trump has gotten a lot of traction on is the issue of crime, removing illegal migrants who are here who have committed crimes. And Mamdani, has said some very dark things about the New York City police. We all remember Bill de Blasio having the police en masse turn their backs to him at a New York City police officer funeral. So that's one of the things that I think we're going to really be watching is this relationship with the police, because 9% are going to leave the city. It's going to be a huge percentage of police officers we know as well.
Yeah, and think about what he said about not working with the NYPD, working with ICE, not working together. And he said essentially wants to double down on the sanctuary city laws that you have here in New York City. And so for a lot of people who live and work and spend their money here or decide to take it and go somewhere else, that's been a huge issue for him. And also all of these promises that you can always make the promises during the campaigns. We know that's what all candidates do. There are some folks, like very controversial folks like Linda Sarsour, who say, I'm going to be staying here and watching. You can't just go in there and do whatever the hell you want. We're going to be enforcing from the outside to make sure that you line up with the progressive things that you promised and that we put you there to do. So it'll be interesting to see how he governs.
Some of those interviews, he was walking back a couple of the things already as of this morning. Listen, we'll take you to New Jersey for a closer look at the governor's race there. We're going to take a short break here as our Fox News election coverage continues.
Democrat Mikie Sherrill will become the 57th governor of the state of New Jersey after defeating Republican challenger Jack Ciattarelli. Let's bring in Brian Yennis. He is live at Ciattarelli headquarters in Bridgewater, New Jersey tonight, where no doubt they are disappointed. Brian.
Yeah, Martha, no doubt they are, but history was made tonight here in New Jersey. Democrat Mikie Sherrill becomes the first female Democrat to become governor of New Jersey and just the second female governor of the Garden State. And no doubt that in her victory speech tonight, she made sure to make clear that this was all about the president. The president says he was not on the ballot, but, Mikie Sherrill made this race a referendum on the president. In her victory speech, she said that governors never mattered more than today. And she said, as the president is cutting SNAP and ripping away health care benefits and terminating things like funding for the Gateway Tunnel Project, which was a rail project here in New Jersey to make commuter life a lot better going into New York City. These are the things that she brought up in her victory speech all the way to the end, making this a referendum on President Trump. For Jack Ciattarelli, I just spoke to their campaign, and they say ultimately they feel like the race was lost here on a couple of things, but they point to one ad made by Sherrill on the sales tax. There was an ad out there that said that Ciattarelli would raise the sales tax. That was a really difficult thing for them to overcome. It wasn't true, but they find that to be difficult, and so send it back to you guys.
Yeah, it's terrible when that happens, when an ad about something that's not true turns out to be a big problem for you. So,
Bill Hemmer's over at the billboard. New Jersey, kind of separated.
Yeah, just bouncing around a little bit. I mean, where were we 12 months ago? Where were we 4 years ago? We're looking at some of these counties, guys, that flipped and they flipped and they flipped again. And really, that's what I'm seeing, okay? I mean, I'll just put your attention down here in southern New Jersey. We did this exercise about 3 hours ago. We'll do it again right now, and here in northern New Jersey as well. Here's your current results. 85% of races called. Sherrill leads by 13 points. Let me go ahead and remove that and show you, this is Jack Ciattarelli's election 4 years ago against Phil Murphy. Phil Murphy, the Democrat. This is one that shocked everybody, right? Everybody was watching Virginia and Glenn Youngkin take on Terry McAuliffe. Once that race was over, we put our eyes on New Jersey, and we were stunned to see that this race was as close as it was, okay? So Murphy was the eventual winner 4 years ago. Let me just put the pencil back up there. You see the pattern, guys? All right, that's 4 years ago, and this is now. And I was just looking at like the presidential results are very similar, too. If you pull up New Jersey from where you are right now, sorry, guys, let me rearrange that bad boy, all right? I think that was the first bad punch we had all night, okay? I mean, this is what Donald Trump did against Kamala Harris, right? He flipped those counties in the south and he flipped those counties in the north, right? Similar pattern, okay? Then you come back to the governor's race this year, and, it just seems to me like these voters that I'm talking about here, they're up for grabs. And they made that pretty well known throughout the night tonight in New Jersey. Back on over there, guys.
All right, Bill. Thank you.
Let's bring in Britt Hume with his thoughts as we sort of digest where we are tonight. Britt, What's the big takeaway for you when you look at these three races?
Well, I don't think you ever need to look very far in our current politics without wondering what the effect of Donald Trump was and is. I was struck by what was coming out of Mikie Sherrill's campaign tonight, that he was a big factor in the race as far as she was concerned, and resistance to him was that. There was a number that was cited earlier from our polling data that showed that something like 70% of the voters on her side that were acting to resist Donald Trump. So I think we have to keep that in mind as we look at all these results. And that's the other side of that is that Trump can turn out voters, but they turn out for him. And everything I think we've seen tonight suggests that when he's not on the ballot, even if he's trying to influence the ballots, if he's not on there himself, his voters are much less interested than they might otherwise be. So that as the Republican Party moves forward here under his leadership, they have to start thinking about what it's going to be like when he's gone. And what it's going to be like in next year when we have a midterm election in which he will not be on the ballot, but the fortunes of his administration very much will be. So I think that's a factor coming out of night that we need to keep an eye on.
Britt, we were very sad that you weren't up here to give us the betting markets as we progressed tonight, because they were pretty accurate.
Well, you know why I did that back then? What was it, 2016, when I was talking about the betting markets, was that I was sitting way down at the far end of the desk. And by the time you all ever got to me, everything that could be said had been said. So I was resorting to the betting markets just to have something to say. As it turned out that night, they told the tale.
That's right. That's right. Now, I wanted to ask you about the economy. And, there is this thought by Treasury Secretary Bessent, others, that this golden time is coming, that it's all going to come to fruition in the first or second quarter of 26. But right now, there is a feeling dichotomy between big companies and Wall Street and what families at home may be feeling. And you're starting to see that in the polls on the economy, upside down on inflation, and on the economy overall.
I agree, Brad, and I think that we have to keep an eye on the effect of AI on all of this. These staggering investments are being made in AI. The technology seems to be advancing by leaps and bounds. But the one thing I think we can all agree on is that it is going to kill a lot of jobs. Now, it may in the long run create a lot of new jobs, as technology has a history of doing. But in the near term, a lot of people are going to be hurt by it. A lot of people will be helped, too, and they'll be on the high end of things, and that'll all be nice. But there are going to be a lot of people who are not on the high end of things who are going to be feeling that, and that will have an effect in our politics going forward, to be sure, particularly in the near term.
All right. Are we going? I think we're going to a tease here, right, guys?
Britt, thank you as always.
Thank you very much. We'll be back to you in just a bit.
You are looking live at Zohran Mamdani HQ in Brooklyn, where we are expecting to see the mayor-elect to speak soon. We'll bring you that live when it happens. Stick around here on Fox News Election Covers 25.
So we are back with our live coverage of Election Night 2025. And what you're looking at is a very happy crowd in Brooklyn, New York, at the Mamdani headquarters. It really has been a striking rise for this now 34-year-old candidate who will be the mayor of the largest city in the United States of America. Before this, he was an assemblyman in New York, in some of the district that overlaps where AOC is. He really was propelled to this mayoral win tonight by young voters who turned out in enormous numbers, and also, interestingly, by Jewish voters in the city of New York, where we have the largest population of Jewish voters in any city in America. All of that obviously has been controversial along the way, but he has propelled himself to a big win tonight. We're going to hear from him, we imagine, fairly shortly.
You look at that crowd and you look at the numbers. Young people, 18 to 34, 35 to 49, 73 to 18 over Cuomo, 52 to 34, 35 to 49. See those guys with the hats? They're in the 17 to 29 area. And there's a lot of young people who voted for Mamdani. Meantime, in Virginia, Democrat Abigail Spanberger coming out victorious in that race to be the Commonwealth's next governor, the first female governor. She defeated Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. Rich Edson is at the Earl Sears headquarters, dying down, I think, or maybe totally died down in Leesburg, Virginia. Rich?
Good evening, Brett and Martha. That's right. It's at that point in a campaign where they have stopped the music and they're cleaning up the ballroom. All has wrapped up for Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, who gave her concession speech about 45 minutes an hour ago. She says she called the governor-elect, Abigail Spanberger, to concede the race. Didn't connect with her. She left a voice message in which she said that she offered to help her and that she hoped that she would lead a state for all Virginians. Abigail Spanberger, her watch party down in Richmond, Virginia, she said that she wanted to thank her opponent, Winsome Earl Sears, for a hard-fought race, and that Lieutenant Governor's story, her military service, and her years of service to the Commonwealth of Virginia, they deserve our respect and our gratitude. So nice words from the two candidates who had a pretty tough campaign against one another here. There was an outstanding race. Fox News called this particular governor's race pretty early, less than an hour after the polls had closed in Virginia, but it was still unclear as to whether Jay Jones, the Democrat running for Attorney General, was going to win his race. And remember, he sent those pretty violent text messages back in 2022. News of them only emerged last month. Democrats were caught in a position where they had to say, or they did say, we condemn the text, but we'll send it back to you.
All right, Rich, thank you.
So let's go to Sandra Smith, who has more insight from our Fox News voter poll, which has a lot of interesting information in it about the dynamic that produced this outcome tonight, Sandra.
Hey, Martha. Hey, Brett. Two big stories that developed throughout the evening, and what we were looking for heading into tonight was whether or not we would see those ticket splitters in Virginia. And turns out there were some. It wasn't enough. But you can see of those who voted for Spanberger in this race, 1 in 10 did split their ticket and vote for the Republican Jason Miyares. 9% of them did, but 86% still voted along party lines for Jay Jones in that race. Also, the gender gap story, it is a huge one, both in Virginia and New Jersey. I mean, this is the largest gender gap we've seen in recent history. So the female vote in this race for Spanberger really put her over the edge. I mean, you're looking at a gap of about 24 points there. When I show you that Winsome Earl Sears did win the male vote by about 6 points, I mean, you put it together, and that's a 32-point gender gap in that race. So the female vote really counted for Spanberger. I'll finish off by showing you also the gender gap that we saw in New Jersey in the race there. It was similar, not as big, but still big enough. This is the male vote in that state, goes to Chitterelli by about 6 points. But then you look at this female vote for Sherrill in that race, a 20-point gap there, and that obviously really helped lead to her victory tonight. A lot of stories developing about that gender gap in those gubernatorial races. Brett, Martha, back to you guys.
Thank you, Sandra. Back
with the panel, Dana Perino, Shannon Bream, Harold Ford Jr., and Charlie Hurt. Dana, the reaction, I think, how do you digest all tonight and what it means as you head to 26? What will the Republican Party say about tonight?
Well, I think that they'll say these were blue states, the Democrats were always going to win, and we have a lot of places where we can win. And I also think that this redistricting story, which is another story that is parallel to all of this, I'm looking at the yellow here on our floor representing California with Prop 50, because the Republicans got this ball rolling and told Texas redistrict, and other Republican states are thinking about it too. California said, not so fast. And so you're going to see a shrinkage of Republicans representing California in some way. I mean, they will say they'll try to win their races. But what I do believe will happen is you're going to have a knockdown, drag-out fight about capitalism and socialism. And what I would love to see is for some in the Republican Party to understand that you, too, can communicate on TikTok and Instagram Reels and to young people about how capitalism is your ticket to affordability. The ticket to affordability doesn't have to rest with Zohran Mamdani and the Democratic Socialists. It rests with figuring out a way to reduce regulations, let you have more money in your pocket, give you the opportunity to take a risk and start a business.
Keep the place safe.
Mamdani's never given anybody a job. That we have, the taxpayers have. And this city is built on capitalism. Like, who is the charismatic person? There's got to be one. That isn't Trump necessarily, because he can't do everything. The Republicans have to think about, how do we try to win when President Trump isn't on the ballot? He will be active in the midterms, but he will not be on the ballot. You have to learn to win by yourself. Same thing was true with Obama when he was president. He did not help. I want to add one other thing, because what Sandra's saying about the gender gap is significant. Latino voters were expected, especially in New Jersey, to come Chitterelli's way. They did not. Okay, so that's another line of conversation. Like, so what's that going to be? Why? Was it the economic conditions? Was it the hope of Zohran Mamdani? Or did it have something to do with immigration? I know that a lot of Hispanics will say that they want, of course, the border to be fixed, but maybe they're not for the way that things are going down across the country when it comes to getting some of the, not of the worst, out of the country.
You know, Harold, this point about capitalism, which I know is something that you're a very big fan of, you know, how do you think, what happens on day one in Gracie Mansion? Who is this mayor going to surround himself with? Do you have any sense of what that's going to look like? Because he told me in our interview that, you know, he was glad that this is known as the capitalism center of the world.
I thought his interview with you, Martha, I guess it's just a few weeks ago now, I was shocked by it in 2 or 3 ways. One, he didn't seem to have a unifying voice that afternoon. He has an opportunity tonight. You asked him point blank if he would arrest Mr. Netanyahu if he found his way back to the United States for any range of meetings, and he didn't say no. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. You talked about policing and talked about public safety, and he talked about wanting to create a new agency within the police department that would help deal with domestic violence and mental health issues. I think many people want that. But I think most New Yorkers, every New Yorker wants to make sure when they call the police, they answer and that they're able to respond. In 2024, just last year, I was on your show after being on this great show the night before we both were, and I said to Democrats, we're not listening. For us to lose this race like this and for people to be so angry, you got to listen. And I think tonight, Democrats and Republicans alike have to listen. People are concerned about the cost of living. People are concerned about affordability. Change was on the ballot here in New York, and Mr. Mamdani won in a big way. I would argue, as much as people think that New Jersey and is a Democratic state and Virginia is a Democratic state, these numbers are real numbers, a 14-point difference. And I agree with Charlie. I don't know how these betting markets get all this stuff right. Maybe Britt can give us some more insight on it. But they got it right, but it's a 14-point win. Finally, Britt made the point about AI. I think the biggest conversation we're going to have as a nation and policymakers and politicians over the next year is how do we embrace the great that AI is going to bring to our economy, the efficiency and the innovation, and what do we do to ensure that the dislocations and the displacements, basically, if regular Americans call firings, what do we do to try to pave a way for everyday Americans to be able to keep their jobs? And on a lighter note, the country should take lessons from New Jersey and New York. We count our votes fast, and we count them officially. We're not waiting till the middle of the night.
Right.
California, New Jersey, Virginia, and New York, within the hour, we had all of the results.
Yeah, that was good.
Kudos to those states.
Charlie, to these points about the separation Dana makes on females, Virginia governor, 2 female candidates.
Yeah.
Spanberger is up 24 points. In New Jersey, Sherrill's up 20 points. Hispanics, Latinos, 30-point win for the Democrat in New Jersey, 30-point win for the Democrat in Virginia. Does that show you that maybe the images of ICE and the immigration stuff is having an effect on females? I'm making a jump here, but is that possible that that's where that could be?
Oh, I think without a doubt. I do think that Virginia is a little kind of hard to draw larger lessons from, just because if you were, Donald Trump is sort of like kryptonite in a place like Virginia. Virginia is never going to, even Republicans are sort of a little bit wary of Donald Trump. And so, they generally like sort of genteel, soft politics in Virginia. Yeah, in terms of the gender gap, I mean, when you look at women voting for Jay Jones by a 55-43 margin. Men voting for Jay Jones against Jay Jones, 58-40. It really does sort of make you wonder. Well, first of all, as a guy that lives in Virginia, I'm going to sleep with one eye open. But it also does kind of make you wonder where the message went wrong in all of that, and how people can, and how Republicans can turn that around. If larger picture, if Democrats take tonight as just a win and no lesson to learn out of this, they're going to be in serious trouble, because at the end of the day, you had this wild scenario in New York City with Mamdani. You had Barack Obama refusing to endorse his own party's candidate in New York City. You have the senior senator of New York refusing to endorse their party's
Not even to
nominee.
say who he voted for.
Not even to say who he voted for. And it's not because he was involved in a scandal or they didn't like something about him. It's because of the issues. And those issues are now dividing the party, and they have to figure out how to bridge that.
All right, stand by.
We're going to have more with the panel coming up, but up next, we'll head west, where California voters are currently deciding a critical ballot referendum that could have major national impact.
All right, we are looking live at the Mamdani campaign headquarters. We are waiting on the mayor-elect, the Democratic Socialist, to deliver remarks in Brooklyn, New York. I think we have the front cover of tomorrow's New York Post, which says, "On your marks, get set, Zoe. Socialist Mamdani wins race for mayor, the red apple," with the... What do you think? You're laughing about it.
They've been brewing on that.
They've been
Upstairs, trying to figure out how they're going with
If
the
you're
big
getting
cover.
flushed down the toilet, you may as well have a laugh about it.
And they always have the best
They
covers.
do, best covers, always.
So we are about 15 minutes away from the polls closing in California. The one major issue there that voters are currently deciding is Prop 50. If it's passed, that referendum will authorize a new congressional map that could cost Republicans up to 5 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. William Lajeunesse joins us from Los Angeles. Hi, William.
Well, Martha, you're right. The whole point of Prop 50 is to make congressional races here less competitive, to make them so heavily Democrat, Republicans can't win. If 50 passes, Dems believe they can pick up at least 5 congressional seats and widen their margins in swing districts. Now, I think we have some maps here. You might be able to see California currently looks on the left, 52 seats, 9 Republican. On the right, under 50, Republicans would likely win only 4 seats, just 7% of a state where Trump won 38% of the vote. This election was framed as a referendum on the president. Polls show more than 90% of those voting for Prop 50 disapprove of the president. Both sides have claimed democracy is at stake. Governor Newsom said 50 is the only way to stop the Trump agenda. The no side blames Newsom for threatening democracy by overriding a voter-approved, nonpartisan redistricting commission by writing a map solely for Democrats for maximum partisan gain. Now, multiple polls suggest Democrats should win here. They have a 2-to-1 edge in voter registration. Their campaign raised twice as much money. They owned the airwaves. Their spokespeople steamrolled local media. The unions, the SEIU, nurses, teachers harvested ballots and got out the vote. Again, Democrats said the intent was to offset Texas, but this gerrymander could also trigger the GOP in North Carolina, Missouri, Ohio, Indiana, Louisiana, Florida to redraw maps that maybe new 9 Republican seats. So the fight not over. Polls close in 15 minutes. There are some lines in several districts. Back to you.
William, thank you.
All right, back with the panel. Dana, Shannon, Harold Ford Jr., and Charlie Hurt. Shannon, you know, this battle, Dana talked about it, the redistricting battle. You know, California may tonight pass Prop 50 and may be able to move 4 or 5 seats. There seems to be more firepower in the Republican states that are moving seats. And then you have the U.S. Supreme Court that may make a decision on the Voting Rights Act that could move 19 seats.
That's actually the bigger possibility for Republicans if succeed in those arguments at the Supreme Court. They've already heard arguments, so now we wait for this decision. If they make a major modification to the way that states can and can't district under the Voting Rights Act, Republicans know that that could be a big boon for them. Because what happens in California, if it does pass there, it's just going to be a wash with what happened in Texas. There are limits on how many states can do these things, but now we wait on the justices, and they're on their clock. They're not on our clock. They know that there are elections out there and the midterms are coming, but we wait that decision on the Voting Rights Act.
With such a slim majority, I mean, you're talking control of the House.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see what happens in California, and we'll see what happens with the Voting Rights Act. You know, just coming back to New York for a minute, because we're waiting for the arrival of Mamdani. It is interesting, Dana, you know, and from a communications perspective, should he come out, or is he going to miss his window when people are up and paying attention to the new mayor?
Here, just think about it. One of his campaign events this weekend was at 1 in the morning at a bar, at a club. Okay, so it's like they're 34 years old. He's got all the youth on his side. They're like, you guys go to bed? What? Like, we're just getting started.
Trace Gallagher has you covered.
Yeah, we're just getting started. So they're not, again, we're talking about clocks. And the Supreme Court, they have their own clock. He's got his own clock. He thinks he's still in the city that never sleeps.
Well, Eric Adams always liked to go out late to the nightclubs, too, so he's going to be carrying that mantle for him.
All right, we are awaiting those remarks from Zohran Mamdani at the headquarters in Brooklyn as you look live. We're going to have some final thoughts from our panel on election night 25, getting ready for 26.
Still waiting for the late night guy, Zohran Mamdani, to come and accept the mayor's office of New York City. He'll get to move into Gracie Mansion with his wife, and we're waiting for word that he has arrived. This is going to be an interesting speech. I think people are going to want to hear what he has to say, see if he tries to temper it a bit, or if he digs in deep to his victory and starts talking, you know, free groceries and buses.
I'm going to say full court press. We'll see. Bill Hemmer is at the billboard. Final thoughts about tonight.
So he's going from rent stabilized to Gracie Mansion. That is quite the upgrade.
Which is also rent stabilized.
Hey, you're right about
As
that.
a wealthy millionaire.
Just give me a minute, guys, and I'll go ahead and break this down. If you want to look at Virginia in a way, like you can almost you can draw a line that shows like the eastern half is a mix of red and blue, and the western half is all red. You could almost do that 4 years ago. Well, this year, if we were to take this off, this is where you see, right? You see the blue creep, right? And then the northern Virginia area that we talked about. I mean, these counties came out in a big way. Oh, sorry. These counties came out in a big way. They are loaded with voters, and they came out to be spoken tonight there in northern Virginia. Like 3 of the top 4 counties in terms of population there in Northern Virginia, really a difference maker. I pointed this out an hour ago. Mix of blue and red in the southern part of New Jersey, a mix of blue and red in the north. This is not what Jack Ciattarelli wanted. He needed to do well in both areas, and tonight was not his night. You got 12.5%. Right, with 91% of the vote there counted. I know you're going to talk about New York in a minute here, and I'll just show you a couple of things here that we were looking at trying to get ready for this night. And what we wanted to emphasize to our viewers at home was just the density of the population, the voters themselves in these 5 boroughs. That just blows your mind when you study a place like the 5 boroughs of New York. It's not a county. It's not a state. You're literally studying a country. And you can find that out here in Queens, right? If you were to pull this up here, try and understand how this borough breaks down. 2.4 million people just packed in this area here. Mamdani in blue. This is his home district, Astoria, Queens, all right? Cleaned up over here. Over here in Jamaica, by the way, you can have Jamaica Estates, Jamaica Hills. You can have all kinds of Jamaicas here, okay? Jamaica Estates is where Donald Trump was born and raised. And Jamaica is also where Andrew Cuomo was born. And tonight they got behind him by about 85%, but it simply was not enough to overcome Mamdani. I think pretty much summarizes a lot of what we've been watching throughout the night, guys.
I wonder if Mamdani will walk out to Billy Joel's New York State of Mind.
Maybe.
There's a backstory there, Martha.
I'm kind of hoping.
Or back to the USSR? No. Oh, wait, what?
Wow.
No,
He didn't know that Billy Joel, he couldn't
fire.
identify the song by Billy Joel, New York State of Mind, in a contest. But I bet he knows it now.
He does know it now. Final thoughts from Britt Hume. Britt, 30,000 feet. How you look at tonight? We've been digging into some of these counties, for example, in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Some of them that Kamala Harris won by 20. That were heavy Latino Hispanic counties. Abigail Spanberger won by 42.
Yeah, I think the margins by which Spanberger and Mikie Sherrill won were surprising to some extent, but it's not at all surprising really that the Democrats won both those two governorships. Those are states that are essentially blue or leaning blue, and they had a kind of a weak candidate on the Republican side in Virginia to go into that. I think something to watch going forward, everybody, is how hard will Mamdani push the agenda that he outlined during the campaign. That'll make a difference on the question of whether he can become or will become the face of the Democratic Party. And let's keep in mind that he can't do very many of these things he promised simply on his own. For example, if he wanted to have free bus rides in New York City, that's not under his control. That's not under the mayor's control. It's not really under the city's control. That's under the governor's control. And there's a body that works with the governor, the Metropolitan Transit Authority, or whatever it's called. That would have to be something he'd get through that. So he may be less prominent as mayor than he was as a candidate, at least in the near term, and that's certainly something I'll be keeping an eye on.
Okay, Britt, thank you again tonight. We'll go down the panel for some quick thoughts. Charlie?
Obviously, I would say that this is kind of a dog bites man kind of story. We could have predicted most of this 6 months ago. Democrats massively outspent Republicans in these races. And the other thing that I think is kind of interesting is I wonder in New Jersey and New York how much of the results are partly a result of the mass exodus of voters that we've already seen to places like Florida.
Shannon.
So there are two deep dive studies that came out for Democrats in the last few days, one from the Welcome Group, one from Democracy Matters. The vast majority of people said that they thought Democrats were out of touch, talking too much about climate change, LGBTQ rights, those kinds of things. They wanted to hear more about the border, crime, and economy. Spanberger and Sherrill did that, and maybe they're the prototype for Democrats moving forward. But they're going to be in contrast to Mamdani, where the party will have to decide in 26 and 28 if he speaks for them.
And they'll have to get results, Dana.
Yes, I think that's also the other thing for Mamdani, right? So if he becomes mayor and is incompetent, then democratic socialism doesn't look so good. Comes in, doesn't do as much as people think he might do, and it kind of goes okay. You will see much more across the nation. There were other elections tonight, including in Minnesota and Minneapolis and in Seattle. And both of those people, right, if they won, and I'm assuming that they did, given the way things are going, this is coming to a city near all of you.
Yes. Harold.
Politics is super fluid. It's dynamic. 4 years ago, people in Virginia voted for a Republican for governor. The message tonight is politicians got to listen to people. You got to listen to voters, respond to voters. There's nothing inevitable because President Trump is president, meaning Republicans are going to win. It has to be earned, and voters are willing to vote for change. That's the message tonight. Democrats, listen to this panel. Respond to people. If you don't, 2 years from now, we may be having a different conversation.
I'm going to be talking to President Trump tomorrow in Miami. He's going to give a speech at an economic forum in Miami. I'll have an interview outside of that on Special Report. We'll see what comes out of that. Thank you for joining us for Democracy 25. Special coverage of this election night. Polls in California close in just seconds.
Thanks to our panel. Thanks to Britt Hume. And thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. Great to have you with us. Our continuing coverage continues right now with Trace Gallagher, who joins us next.